high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls.
Happy holidays, everyone! Your host Carly here, and I thought I'd add a little more cheer to your season by doing something a little different this month. Throughout December, Gender Pop will be releasing 3 separate episodes, all centered around the Black Christmas movies. Let's call it Ho Ho Horror, shall we? I really thought I was going to be able to deliver that one so smoothly. You know, nothing says the jolliest time of year than a good old slasher film, right? And along for the ride is none other than podcast favorite, author, and librarian James Wright. We will be getting into heavy spoilers, and please heed my content warnings regarding abortion, sexual assault, and femicide. Let's string up the lights and open the doors to Pi Kappa Sig. Hello, James. Welcome back again and again and again.
Hello.
So, today we are going to discuss Black Christmas, the original one from 1974. As explained, it's a part of a trilogy that Gender Pop is going to be doing, discussing each and every one of the Black Christmas movies.
Yeah.
So the IMDb synopsis, as I always like to start out with, just describes it as, during their Christmas break, a group of sorority girls are stalked by a stranger. It's directed by Bob Clark and written by Roy Moore. So this isn't the first time you've seen this movie. Do you recall the first time you watched it and kind of what you felt? Because obviously it's known as quite a cult classic now, and you're a big horror guy, so I'm just wondering what your kind of relationship with it has been.
Yeah, I think everyone knows this is like the first slasher movie before there were slasher movies. So it's something you hear when you're a horror fan and you think, oh, I'll check it out. So I think I checked it out like, I don't know, like 15 years ago, first time. And yeah, I remember being surprised then because, it is interesting and the characters feel a lot more fleshed out than most, characters then in the 80s slashers, all these tropes. Whereas you could sort of say there were tropes here, but not entirely. It's definitely not a focus if it was to be, if they're just real people. And again, a lot of times, we watch these 70s movies, and it does seem like that was more of a trend. It was like more stories about real people, whether they were in weird circumstances or not. And it seems like it was in the 80s that everything got devolved into like, oh, look at these archetypes we're doing, which is interesting. It's also
And
interesting that, sorry.
no, I was just going to agree that um it's the origins of tropes often are not as tropey as the trope becomes, if that makes sense. Like, take a shot every time you hear
Hmm.
trope because it'll probably come up. But because which makes sense because, like, obviously films that are at the kind of start or help create a genre aren't pulling from that reference. They are the reference, right? So it's like they don't know how to kind of neatly color within the trope lines. At the time, this was still new and kind of unexplored country in terms of film in this kind of genre. So it's interesting that, like, you can come to know a trope very, very well and then want to go and be like, go and check out where this trope came from, and you start watching it and you go, or reading it or whatever it is, and going like, oh, this actually is quite different, or this isn't exactly what we usually associate with this kind of trope, because again, you know, they weren't making it with that in mind, like other
Hmm.
people going forward who are influenced by it are. So it is a really weird kind of thing to be like, well, Jess is like a final girl, but she's not really like the ones that would come after her and all this, like, just as an example. So, um, yeah, it's an interesting point you made, and it's
Well,
also
yeah, because I
something
was
that I thought a lot of too while watching it.
it's like if it had been filmed later, you'd say that the remarks about the first girl who gets killed for like, oh, she's like a, I can't remember the exact, like they call her something like an apparent virgin or whatever they do. They literally call her a virgin, and that's obviously the final girl
Yeah.
trope is that you're a virgin, and then she's killed first. So in a later movie, you'd say, "Oh, that's on purpose." That's like a comment. It's like, well, no, that's just how it is here. We just happen to have that person die first. Like
We kind of
it's
retroactively apply those tropes to the kind of
yes,
prototypes for what they'd become. Because, like, at the time, I doubt people were watching this and being like, oh, she's going to go first and she's going to be the one that survives and she's going to be the one that gets like the worst kind of death because of her transgressions or whatever. Like people didn't have necessarily that film knowledge and language, not because they were dumb or ignorant or anything, but just because it was new and it wasn't what audiences have come to know it as now. So, um,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's
It's funny how
important
like
to keep in mind when watching these things.
well, it's like a trope is like a shorthand, and you kind of like I think it's natural to presume that a shorthand would help you build upon an idea. You can already like get out of the way, whereas it actually seems like you lose a lot of nuance when you do that because you like your mind can't, as a writer or whatever, can't go outside of that trope to a. You can you either play to the trope or you play against it. You're kind of locked into that binary at that point. Whereas when the trope doesn't exist, you have a lot more room to play with because you're not thinking about it to then be locked into that tradition. So that's probably part of why all the 80s slashers feel so I don't know, not close-minded, but like they have a very set thing of like, oh, that's a black character, and that's the girl character, that's the final girl, and that's the the slut character or whatever. And like we've got to like either you do a surprise where they're not, or they are, and they're the two things you can work with. Whereas here it's just kind of like these are just characters. One has a bit of a drinking problem, one has more of a drinking problem, and so on.
You do have the kind of archetypes here. Again, I don't think they're necessarily like playing into them because I don't think that I don't think they probably saw them as archetypes necessarily
Oh,
when writing it. Because you do have like the kind of you have Claire, who's the pure virgin, chaste, um, just kind of goody two shoes, prude kind of character. And she's the one that gets killed first. Um, and then you have Barb, played by Margot Kidder, who is, does have an alcohol problem. She's kind of the loudmouth. She's crude. She's crash. She's gonna tell you what she thinks. She'll play around with you. She's just the type of person that immediately announces herself in any room, probably. Then you have Phil, who's kind of I don't know, she's just kind of like maybe the nerdy best friend side character. We don't really get to know her as much. She's just very she's played by Andrea Martin. And then you have Jess, who's the main character, played by Olivia Hussey. And I guess from my understanding, she's not the typical kind of final girl. Like I was one of the kind of film analyses that I was watching pointed out that a lot of times final girls are or more quote unquote boyish in how they act because they kind of stand apart from their more feminine counterparts. They're not messing around with boys as much. They might not dress up and be as kind of frilly as their friends might be or something, or they're not preoccupied with the same kind of things that a lot of their female friends are at the time and everything. And Jess is quite feminine how she's shown. She's also obviously not a virgin, as we find out with her abortion storyline. Um, but and also like it's interesting because she doesn't really get that final big fight with the quote unquote bad guy. She obviously has a confrontation with her boyfriend Peter and everything, but obviously we know that that's not the killer in this story. So
Hmm.
again, it kind of comes
I
to
bet you
that
haven't.
trope thing. But that brings me to a question I kind of had that goes along with this trope conversation is that like this film does seem quite progressive in its portrayal of women. And why do you think that kind of got lost in the genre that it inspired? Because like going forward, a lot of the depictions of women in slashers are not very um respectful of women or don't care about them, are used for titillation, used just for gory
Yes,
kills, whatever, until maybe more recently.
I was thinking about this with like in terms of like black characters in horror recently anyway, where it's like I do feel like the reason the whole trope of like oh the black character die first happened is because a lot of people weren't even really planning on having one, and then someone said like, "Oh, add it into your script," and you're like, "Okay, well, I have nothing to give them, so they'll die for." Rather than turning, because obviously the solution would be to turn one of your other characters you like into just a black person for whatever reason. Instead of like, "Oh, we'll add one. I have nothing to give them. Oh, they're dead." I mean, you have to write. You don't have to change the script much anymore. So that's a real problem, and I feel like that's sort of what maybe happened with a lot of the 80s slashes where it's like, okay, well, the producer's like, well, we need some girls in it. We need like some, TNA and whatever. Add some in. So it's like
Like
throw a
token
bunch
it in.
in. Exactly. It's the adding a character in. Oh, I don't really. This wasn't part of my plan. Get rid of them because you can kill. That's like a device you have is to kill people in a slasher movie. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's like a kind of uh, dumbing down each time where if you saw this and then you said that Halloween sort of like took a bit from this and then Friday the 13th took a bit from that, you're already kind of like knocking it down. If I don't think that Halloween was completely derivative of Black Christmas, but certainly when you look at even the characters in Halloween, like they are a bit more ditzy than these characters. These are just normal everyday women, basically. Like
Yeah.
they're in a sorority. There's no like if you described it to someone now with our view of what we think of that is, who said, "Oh, these girls in sorority they get killed by a stalker," and you said that's you would imagine something so different to the movie if you've never seen it because it's
Yeah.
just like there's nothing like any of the stuff you would have imagined. There's no like pillow fights and shower scenes and like it's just literally some women standing around a kind of like normal house, like a big house,
Well,
but
that's
it's
like
like
the
and
point
stuff
that I
like
that's a point that I saw made where it's like it's almost like the genre got scared of having grown-ass women be in their movies, and so they had to make them all teenagers. Because obviously after this, most of the horror movies are centered around teenagers, and these, and like even though the women in this are still quite young, like early 20s and stuff, like they do have full lives. They work, they go to school, they have responsibilities, they pay for things, like, and it is like, they're much more maybe not much, but they're more experienced in the world than the kind of usual crop of characters we get in a lot of slashers that come after this, where you can maybe portray them as a little more ditzy, a little more stupid, a little more impressionable, and all that stuff. And so, yeah, it was. I liked seeing a cast of women that were kind of actually women and were unafraid of kind of showing that they had those facets to their lives and everything. And it does seem like that fell by the wayside the further the genre went on for the most part.
I think the main thing is that this is a story that is set in a sorority house because clearly the writer and director they wanted to tell a story about young women and what they go through. So
Mm,
they kind of like it's not like oh here's a generic setting summer camp like high school blah blah. It's like no we're setting it here because we have a story to tell about their issues. That's why. And like we're not doing it, there is no titillation or like expectations. We made this story because we want because no, something I noticed from the get go is they're really highlighting and hammering home absentee parents, in my
mm.
opinion. Like Mark, like having how bad I am at
That
names, but like
conversation, that conversation she has with her mom on the phone just cracks me
yes,
up.
exactly, yeah.
She
Where
calls
she
her a
just like
gold-plated C word. Like, what?
it's you're a real well, okay. I'm not sure what I got, but like you're a real gold-plated whore mother is what I think she says,
Oh,
and
she said
like
whore. Okay.
you know
Yeah, so what I think I don't think I completely got what happened there with Barb's mom. So Barb was gonna go home, but then her mom was like, "No, we have other plans." So then she decided she would take her friend skiing or something like that. I think I for some reason blanked
it
out in
was
that conversation.
it was a little bit garbled. Definitely what I got from it was, yeah, she was supposed to go with her, and then her mother's decided to go off with some bloke.
Okay.
Like, so she's just kind of like doing her own stuff and following her
Yeah.
own thing and leaving her daughter behind. And then, so that's one case. And then, like, it just felt like that was the whole thing with the house mother, obviously, just like drinking and drink. But the reason this film is it's so stand out is because it's not only is it a slasher before slashers were slashers, but it's also like a boner comedy before boner comedies were a thing. Because that's like Porky's in the 80s and stuff. And it's like you're his house where we're just like finding booze everywhere, like a toilet tank, in a book. I feel like it's literally everywhere she looks, there's like a bottle of booze. Just take. So that's like there's always weird comedy in the movie that's not played for. It doesn't stop for like a laugh track. It just like happens. But there's so much jokes and yeah, they kind of like wait. I'll get into that later because that is like a whole different theme about like the humor versus the actual stalking that's happening. But in this book, like they really do, I think, hammer home the whole like adults don't care about these people, and that's why they're going missing and stuff. And also you have the whole other thing where like there's the other kid who gets fined for the body of a girl in the park. Weird, coincidental thing happening at the same time as this, and it just makes it all very confusing. There's just so much going on in this movie that like
I
wouldn't be on the
completely
script.
forgot about that B plot with the 13-year-old girl who I think also is named Jess. It sounds like that's what the mother calls her or something close, which I thought was interesting. I mean, Jessica is a common enough name, but I don't know if that was like laziness or pointed that she had at least a name that at least sounded similar. Um, and so yeah, so there's this kind of side plot that we find out where a mom is distraught because her daughter is missing. They do a search party for her and they end up finding her dead body. And then that obviously causes ripples throughout the community of being scared, and it also helps be the catalyst for what allows the police to finally take the harassing phone calls that the sorority is receiving more seriously. But you're right in that there is this weird level of like neglect happening with the parents or this sort of awareness in that. I mean, like I think the biggest thing of that is just like that Claire is just never fucking found. Like that
Yeah,
bothers
that's
me.
so
So I
cold, man.
think I think that's like the creepiest part. Okay, so like I'll fully cop to the fact that I was really dumb about this detail of the movie. When at least when I first saw it or how I remembered it,
Mm.
and then I was clarified on this watch is that I thought so she's killed in her bedroom and then taken to the attic where she basically just starts to decay and mummify and all this stuff. I missed the detail that she was taken to the attic. So I thought she was just in her room this whole time. And I'm like, how are people not looking in her room? Like, even if you don't think she's in there, you could still look in there for clues. Like, did she start packing? Is there any signs that she was here recently or leftover things from places that she had been or something, like so I was like, it was driving me mad that no one bothered to look at. But then even still, with her being in the addict, attic, and I think that is the creepiest part of this movie is that like you can have so many people around and still be missing like a huge freaking like clue or thing that's going on. Because like obviously if they had found her early on, not that there wouldn't have been a movie, but like they would have known something serious was going on very quickly, and like the dad would have known and all this stuff, and the police would have been on it more quickly, um and like the fact that they still don't completely sweep the house even by the end is like what the fuck. Like it's so poorly
Yeah.
managed.
That
But
was
I do.
another thing.
Yeah. I was just like I think yeah, I think that was the sad and scariest thing that there was just like this corpse, and then obviously ended up being two, and Mrs. Mack was also killed in the attic. Um, just chilling there, just hanging around while all this stuff was happening, and just the idea that would just be sitting just right above them as everything's going down is just like it's really creepy. And obviously the last shot is zooming out of Claire's body, just still there, kind of showing that they're back where they started in a way, and it's just like this poor girl has still not been found, and um I think that's just yeah, that's really telling how you can still miss stuff and somewhat in plain sight. I mean, I get that it's all the way in the attic, but even after everything's gone down, you gotta your mind wonders of like when the hell are they even gonna like find her, and how's the dad gonna feel knowing that she was there the whole time he was in that house, and it's just like it adds a really tragic kind of element to it. I mean, aside from the fact that the whole affair is quite tragic, but since that kind of kicks it off, it's just like poor Claire, man.
I think one thing I did notice about this movie, apart from the parental neglect, is like a running theme of complacency. So like even at the
Mm.
start, you have the pervert caller, and obviously some of the girls aren't okay with it, but a lot of them are just like, well, whatever, that's just what happens. We get these all the time. So no one takes it seriously then. And then the complacency of like well, if you look at the dad when he does come to look for his daughter, like he's like more concerned about her relationship with boys than he is about the fact
It's
that
a
she's
den of
missing. He's like, well,
sin. The Surias is a den of
there's a
sin.
there's a bit apart from all the boner comedy stuff, god damn it, they try to distract from the fact that like there's a bit in the police station before the fellatio joke where he's talking about her being dead and the police officer's like, oh most of the time when these girls are missing, they're like in a cabin with their boyfriends, and the father goes, that'd be just as bad. Like he literally says that'd be just, and it's like, okay. And then when to the point is in the end when the boyfriend is killed, presumed to be the killer, people just like there's this weird idea. This is why I said to you, like off air, I'm not sure what the point, like what the message of the movie is, because there's almost like a narrative of like we presume that a girl being with a guy is just as harmful as them being murdered. At that time, certainly, that seems to be what they're saying. In the 70s, that's like an observation. Um, and it's like, oh well, it was a boyfriend. Clearly, I knew it was. And the police officer's like, oh, I knew it was him from the start. And then like they just leave, leaving her in bed. And I mean, and there's a lot of complacency in that as well because obviously Margot's Robbie character is left in bed as well, and so there's people just being left to die throughout the whole movie. And then yeah, as you say, they don't switch the attic at all because they're like, well, yeah, that's done, job done. We caught the killer. That's all fine. I mean, even I think a big thing was that the little girl who was missing wasn't going to be searched for because if you watch what happened, like they come in and report the one girl who gets killed first. It'd be helpful if I knew names.
Claire.
Yeah, that's so you come and they report Claire, and then no one's taken that seriously. And
Mhm.
then you cut to the mother talking about her missing daughter, and the guy's not taking that seriously either, the police officer she's talking to. But then Claire's boyfriend comes in demanding stuff to happen. And because he, as the man, demands stuff to happen, and he's like very like jock, very like attract square jawed, they start to take that seriously. So they do a search for Claire, and that's when they find the girl. So it's like almost like a knock on thing, like only because this guy came in and caused a fuss. Because even the dad causing a fuss didn't do anything really. It was just this. You have to be this like big strapping guy, and then all the police actually start taking that seriously. Did a search, and so yeah, the point. I feel like the movie's very purposely saying nothing would have got done had it just been the girls involved, or even the dad, like some old weird nerdy dude. It had to be this like
I mean, even the
strapping.
dad though, like when it's like the first time we see them talking to Officer Nash, who's the really inept,
Mm,
goofy, just like law officer clerk guy at the station. Like we first see two of the women doing it, and like obviously he's not taking them seriously. And it's not till the dad rolls in that he actually like starts to listen. It's not that he even takes an action towards it,
mm,
but like I still feel like there is a palpable change in his dealings of them where he's like at first he's just calling the women, he's like telling them to calm down and all this stuff, and then the dad comes in
mm.
and he's like, okay, well, like, I'm still
Well,
not
at
going to
least
necessarily care, but like I'll at least listen to you and give you the time of day in a different way than he was with the women. And like, but you're right, like I at least liked that Chris, who is Claire's boyfriend, took her being missing seriously. He could have dismissed Jess
mm,
when she brought it up to him, and she says the police aren't doing anything, and his response is, well, why the fuck not? And I love that that's not to, you know, over um champion the men in this movie because they aren't great all out of the time, or they kind of struggle just as much. But it was nice that it wasn't like, oh, is she like cheating on me? She with another guy, or oh, she's just off doing this, she'll be back kind of a thing. Like this was at least someone that cared and was perplexed why the police also wasn't caring in the same way that the women were caring about this. And like you said, he took that as an opportunity to insert himself into it, which got more attention to what was going on. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pivot into kind of the meat of the story here, at least for our main character, Jess, and that her storyline revolves around her wanting an abortion. She's together with Peter, Um, and so I just wanted to know. So obviously she tells Peter she's pregnant. She tells him she's going to get an abortion, and he does not react well. So as
Mm.
the more male presenting of us two, I wanted to get your kind of thoughts and reactions to his character throughout the film and how he deals with this news and his partner while she's going through this as well.
Yeah, he's like it's hard because you don't get to see him before he's in this bad way because like you kind of get the feeling that maybe beforehand he was like more caring. Oh, well, actually, that's not true because on the phone he does say like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like when they're having the when she's like, "I need to talk to you in person," and he's like, "Blah blah blah." He's like, "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm just really overworked." Like so you can kind of get the sense that he was more caring beforehand. But then, as I say, they put him in like a really bad place where it's like, okay, this guy's like, but I mean, it's very poignant because it's like he's stressed about his own stuff, and then when she's like, "By the way, I'm going to have an abortion," he's like, "No, you're not," and then he's like, because basically, because by doing that, by saying no, he's like asking her to give up whatever her dreams are. Um, don't go into too much, I think, in the film, but like you could presume she wanted to do something. She's at college and stuff, you know. And then he's like, "You bringing this news to me is ruining my stuff right now. How dare you?" And then so you get the hypocrisy of it. You completely get the whole like, I'm kind of expecting you to give up your life straight away, but I shouldn't have to give up mine even right now. You distracted me from my recital or whatever. How dare you? You ruined everything. There's all this blame placed on her. Like it's it's 100% I blame you for what you're bringing to me now, but also you don't get the sole decision because I played a part in this. It's my child too. And it's like you can't demand accountability while rejecting responsibility. Like he is definitely playing the archetypical like what a bad reaction to a guy in the situation is. I would be interested to see like whatever character was beforehand, and if we're talking about is this guy like, but the movie's trying to play with you. It's trying to make you think like is this guy like the killer and blah blah blah. So they're kind of doing this whole thing. How weird is he already? And obviously he has these very outlandish emotional reactions, which if it was a female character, you would be, it would be like a negative stereotype. And here it's like, see, but also going back to the minimalizing things, it's not seen as like a masculine thing in some ways because while we said about the guy who is the boyfriend who demands stuff happening with this guy because he's like all in his feels and like smashed up his piano. That's why the detective suspects him in the first place because well he hears a phone call first of all, and then he also like sees the smashed piano. And that's why when she kills him, they're like, good, case closed. He was definitely the killer, no question about it. Even though there's like evidence sort of that he was like one place when the phone calls were happening, that would mean it would be hard for him to because like we have mobiles, you would have to have a land. It's like you can't do that. And you can't make a call from a landline. Yeah, I don't really get. I think probably explained it, but like, so the housekeeper had like a separate phone line because how did they even do the phone call? Anyway, I'm getting off track. Abortion drop is the main point, but like, yeah, like how do you call someone in the same house in the '70s? I just don't really understand that, but I'm sure there's a way, and I just missed it. Um, but yeah, okay. I think he handled it very poorly. Obviously, if we're going back to yeah.
Well, it's
I mean, that's the whole
interesting
point.
that I kind of would disagree that he might have been sweeter and more caring. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't maybe have his moments, but I think based off we see him get very kind of violent and aggressive twice with his piano and with the Christmas tree where he like starts smashing up like ornaments on the tree when he goes and visits her at the house. And it made me wonder like if even if this wasn't happening and even if he and Jess weren't going through this or they did end up marrying each other like he wanted, would he have just been continued to get worse? I mean, I really kind of saw red flags and abusive behavior from him, if anything. Um, even if when he was apologizing on the phone, like that easily gets into this kind of behavior of I'm gonna lash out, but as long as I kind of apologize half-assedly every time, it's okay.
Hmm.
Like I definitely got the feeling that this was just a cycle of behavior with him. Obviously, it's centering around what it centers around. It's very heightened, um, and would make anyone emotional and stressed out. But I did not get the feeling that he was ever a good partner to her, and I just really wanted. She just kept calling him her boyfriend later in the film, and I'm like, no, I think he needs to be your ex-boyfriend by now, girl. And I
Yeah.
mean, she really makes him an ex-ex, but because she ends up accidentally, what was it, killing him at the end with a fire poker. Of course, by that time, she's she well and fully believes that it could be him and all this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
my thing is like if you because they kind of talk about him being the possible suspect a couple times, and it's just like she's having a conversation with a friend. It's like, do you really think so? And like, I'm like, if you have any doubt in your mind that the person you're with could, if you're entertaining that for a second, this is something you need to be far, far away from. Like, it should be a resounding no. Like, there's no way, and everything. Like, so it's like she already was sus of him too. Like, he just was not passing any of the vibe checks throughout the whole film. And again, like you say, we only see them in a very specific vacuum of time when they're going through a really stressful situation on like two fronts. But the way that he kind of just straight away launches into blaming her and being a hypocrite, like you said, and lashing out in violent ways, even if it's not directly on her body, and like the way that he's expecting her to just give up everything and not give a shit. Like, cause and I think she handles it really well in terms like she's always very straightforward with him and very honest.
Yes.
And she also reminds him that this is not surprising. She goes, do you remember when we first got together? You said you had these dreams and ambitions, and I had my dreams and ambitions, and we thought that like that made us compatible, and we were kind of in this together, trying to progress our lives in this way. It shouldn't be surprising to you that I don't want like a family or the white picket fence and stuff, at least just yet. And she just fucking flat out goes, I don't want to marry you. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're supposed to take in that instant as kind of like a breakup, saying like, I don't want to be with you at all, or it's just she's like just rejecting the notion of being married. But she's always very, very honest and upfront with him. And so it's not like he can even fall back on being like, oh, well, you kind of are using all this double speak and you're not really saying what you want or what you need. And like, I'm always having to read your mind and all this shit. Like, it's interesting because it kind of is sort of a gender swap in how the couples are presented, right? Usually women are shown to be the more emotional, quote unquote, hysterical one in the relationship, and the guys are the more stoic, have it together, more practical thinking or whatever. But in this sense, he's the one that's being unhinged as shit while she's trying to keep it together. And it's like he just has no empathy for her in this situation. He's like really lacking in compassion towards what she's going through. It's not like just because she doesn't want the baby doesn't mean that it's not hard for her. And also the fact that she's going through this whole thing with the harasser in their house. Like,
Mm.
does he care? Like, it's just like he just does not seem like it reminds me of something I said in our Love at First Bite episode where it's like he's relationshipping at her and not with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I just no, I'm fuck Peter. I just really, really he just like
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
he's such a
Now we get to the
he's a stereotypical kind of toxic, not maybe not stereotypical because he's not.
Well, I think that's my whole point that I was going to say. Sorry, is that like if anything, he's like really not the stereotype because we're talking about 70s
Okay, interesting.
sensibilities here. You got to wind it all the way back to like what is a guy like in the 70s, um, and like once again we have like
I
this
wouldn't
whole
know.
like
I wasn't alive.
well, he's like an artist type. He's like he's like sensitive and all stuff. And again, like in Love at First Bite, you've got the idea of like the sensitive, possibly understanding guy as the villain. Because like, actually, is he really understanding, or is he paying lip service to it? And when he gets a situation he doesn't like, he flips out on you and he says like, "Hey, f you! I'm telling you what I." And that's why I say you touched upon it. Like, I love that character of Jess because she's so like, I know what I want, and why I would pull back on the whole like abusive thing is because like she's so strong-minded. There is no evidence of her ever taking anyone's shit in any way, shape, or
It
form. And
doesn't
it's
mean
not.
he still wouldn't try, or
Well, no,
that what he's
it's true.
doing to
Yes,
her is
I mean,
not
he literally
toxic.
threatens her life. I'm pretty sure. But like, the point is, she is very like, I'm doing this. I'm getting an abortion. You won't change my mind. I don't want to marry you. There is no hesitation in her thought process. She's a very self-assured character. And when it's like what you said before, like oh, she's not very masculine. It's like she's not, but as you said, the roles almost flipped because she is so like she has no doubt about anything. She doesn't feel intimidated by anything, even with her. She's just like, well, she doesn't like it. It's like, don't threaten my life. How dare you? But like, it's not like she's scared about a killer in her house. But even when that happens, she ends up killing him. He comes towards her. He did. Like when they cut back, the next time you see him, he's dead. So like, yeah, I like that you've got like this. She's a great, strong female character before they even really. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there are loads of films where there's strong female characters beforehand, but like the way we view it, the tropes that we have in our head, she's a very different type of just like, I know who I am and I will fight for my corner no matter what. I don't have to present as masculine to do that. I'm just going to do it. And yeah, I think a lot of that nuance is completely lost everywhere else in a lot of movies going forward, especially slashers going forward. Obviously, like there are some
Well,
films
I mean,
obviously
I
where
think
like
you can say that that just makes Peter worse in that, like, I don't know, it falls into that kind of um shitty dynamic where some people, and a lot of those people can end up being men, say
yeah,
that they
want to
kind of
hide a girl
want,
like
well, well, they say they kind of want a strong, confident woman, but then when they actually buck up against that, they realize that they don't and they can't handle it, and they feel like they kind of
yeah,
have to assert the dominance and everything. And it's like, I mean, like you say, like it would be really interesting to see how they were before this, because he's so demeaning and belittling to her, and it seems like it comes very easily and naturally to him, quite honest, that I wonder if he's kind of always been like that or not. But or sometimes it can take a while or even a stressful factor to bring that out in someone. But you know, he does not respond well to her honesty and to her,
no,
he
I
wants, in the end, because like he asks her to basically give up her whole life to marry him, have this kid, and while he still well, he says he'll give up his thing too, and she rightfully is like, no,
yeah,
that's just stupid. Ever since I've known you, this is all you could talk about, kind of thing. That she's like, I don't want you to not have what your dreams either. Like, she's not only making
mm,
like, that's again why it's hypocritical, like we keep saying, because he accuses her of being selfish when he is being extremely selfish. She actually is considering, at least in that later conversation, she is considering him of like, I don't want you to not have that dream and ambition either, when I know that that's what you've been working so hard for. Um,
he
but
gets one
also,
sniff of her being a baby, he goes all Stepford.
yeah, but it's like he does, maybe he admires those qualities in her when it's not directed at him, but
Yes,
he wants her to end up being that kind of docile, complacent, I'll do whatever you want, dear, kind of woman at the end of the day, or at least when this issue comes up. And it's like, it
I see.
doesn't,
I did.
in that scenario, it doesn't matter how strong the other person is. That doesn't necessarily going to keep someone from impressing their will upon someone. And it's like, it's clear he was just going to keep going at it until he kind of got what he
Yeah,
wanted, for, like we saw, he died, and it's not like um that was like premeditated or anything, but it's just like, it was one of those things that just kind of kept reaching this fever pitch. And it's one of the
mm,
things that obviously creates tension throughout the film too. And I think for audiences nowadays, they probably know that it's not Peter. It's a very obvious kind of red herring situation. But um I don't, honestly, it's a lot of times those people don't care how the other person is in the scenario. They're just going to keep being how
yeah.
they're being.
Well, I kind of forgot honestly because I was watching. I was like, wait a minute. So is it revealed that he like? I know obviously Billy's a invariant, but like in my head couldn't remember. Like, wait a minute, was he revealed to be Billy in the end? And my brain
No.
like kind of like started to
Mm,
yeah, exactly. But my brain started to forget because of how much they do red herring him. But I think I
yeah.
agree with a lot of what you said there. But I have a slightly different
Mhm.
interpretation of Peter in terms of like I don't know how much he wanted traditional gender. Well, I think he did want it. It was like I took a lot of meaning from him being a pianist and like for musical expression, for emotion, for control he needed. And what set him off is that lack of control, where it's like your body, I'm gonna do this is our baby, but I'm choosing to do this, and that's like taking control away from him, and that snapped him. He was like, "No, I am going to set the boundaries to this. We'll get married. You'll do this. This will happen." And him from then on is him trying to like keep the control that he needs in his brain. Like, and it does play into traditional masculine things, but I think a lot of that was like I think the choice of him being a pianist was very purposeful at this point. I think they were like, this is a thing about control, and which comments on the whole idea about a woman's body and how men do seek to control it. And it's like, so there's a lot of gen stuff in there, but it wasn't it. There's a reason he wasn't like a dumb football jock. Why the dumb football jock was a guy who was looking for his girlfriend as well. They were doing it kind of like an idea about like, well, what makes men so upset over this issue, despite the fact that like the rest of the film, the complacency, who cares? I'll leave them, they'll be fine. Oh no, there's a prank caller, whatever, it doesn't matter. No one takes you seriously until you try to take my control away, my control of your body. How dare you? And then it becomes like a whole
It's
big
almost
issue.
like a swap of what we expect, because like we're kind of told that like artistic people or artistic men would make better boyfriends. They're in touch with their emotions and they're softer and blah blah blah. But it's actually like the artist or more artistic one in this is like worse than the jock, because the other boyfriend, even though he is assertive and stuff, he's much better a portrayal of a much, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, a more healthier portrayal of a boyfriend and of just a man in this kind of environment and dealing with this kind of stressful situation and stuff. Um, which is funny because originally the studio wanted him to be the killer, wanted Chris to be the serial killer.
Uh,
They said that like they wanted it to be so like the end we have the shot of just Jess lying in her bed by herself, and then it was going to reveal that Chris was like sitting in the chair next to her and was going to like rattle off one of the lines that Billy had already said to show that
hmm.
he was actually the one. And they were like, no, that doesn't make sense because he was with the police a lot of the time. Like it wouldn't have made sense for him to be able to even be able to do all of that stuff in the court. But it's just like it's interesting that the studio thought it would be interesting to kind of do the more obvious twist of like, oh, let's take this character who's been pretty nice and helpful this whole time and actually make them the bad one and all this stuff. But it is interesting that it's the jock that is a maybe portrayal of a safer man or a safer partner than the artist or the artistic type.
Well, I think that's like one of those things, isn't it, where like you say like, oh, they're more in touch with their feelings, but what if their feelings are negative? Then they know it more. It. I mean, again, this is why this movie is interesting because it's got a much more nuanced idea than, I mean, yeah, the slashers going forward, it is normally the artistic type who's like the male love interest, and then the jock is probably the one who gets killed because he's with. Yeah, it's very interesting how they dumbed down kind of everything. So I know it was because they just wanted
They
to make it
weren't
fun.
like, I don't think that because again, these things weren't tropes necessarily.
Hmm.
They weren't bogged down by trying to like live up to those and maybe being limited by those in the way that other films kind of felt like they needed to them. Maybe it wasn't weird to have a jock be a little more the more well-rounded or better character than the art, like maybe these just things weren't in the consciousness as much as they would become. But it's interesting that you're saying you didn't know what the message of this film was, because I don't even think the filmmakers realized the message of this film or that it would read as a message to people, because in the following years, both the director Bob Clark and the star Olivia Hussey would say they weren't trying to make a political or social commentary statement with the abortion storyline. They were just doing that to include something for the characters to be doing in between all of the
Oh,
kind of slasher stuff. And
that's weird. Okay.
yes, I found that very disheartening. I wonder if it's true or if they just kind of got spooked by the conversation, as the climate has always been very tumultuous around that. I mean, it was tumultuous at the time. It's
Hmm.
interesting that they used it. I mean, it's weird because like for historical context, Roe v. Wade was only codified like a year before this went into production. So that was very, very new and very, I have to assume, on everyone's mind. So it's
Hmm.
like, it's kind of nuts that in that kind of social environment, you would then choose to include this in your film and not see it as a
Well,
point to be made.
yeah,
Like
I
it's,
that
yeah.
has to be a smokescreen because the fact is that Billy is set off by that. Like until that point, he's like benign, well, relatively, comparatively to being a psycho killer. And then obviously when he's doing the phone calls, like half of that story, as like I've got a vague memory of what the story is, but it's something like there was an abortion involved in that, and that kind of like is part of it, and like. There's also like I don't know if I'm mixing up stuff from the remakes now where they expand upon this, or if it is part of the original story.
Well, it's
But
important to say that Bob Clark gave his kind of blessing to that remake, and he actually did create a backstory for Billy himself, and it is what they ended up portraying later on in either the remake or
okay.
whatever. So like that is kind of an extension of his vision. So it's not wrong to kind of infer things from there of
Yeah.
what he was thinking for the character.
Well, then in that case, the abortion in the Billy thing, I think is like a big thing. I think like that's why he's like, "Don't kill the baby, don't kill the baby." Like all that. I mean, he says a lot of stuff, but like, yeah, like that is a part of it. And I think so. Yeah, I don't believe that it's not at least important to some degree to the actual plot. I mean, and also because it's not really the murder is definitely not the main focus of the film because they spend half the time doing like this weird comedy stuff. But that scene where Margot Robbie talks about turtle, what is her name?
Barb.
Barb, but what and the actress's name?
Oh, Margot Kidder.
Margot. Okay, I'll try and remember those things. But
It's
yeah,
all good.
that scene, that scene where Margot Kidder goes on about like turtles fucking and like premature ejaculation and all that stuff. But that's like a good few minutes of her talking about how turtles bang for a long time and how zebras come really quickly. There's
I
no
think
bearing.
that was Bob Clark's influence as well, because from my research, it seemed like Roy Moore had written a much more straightforward slasher film. It was intended to be more graphic, as in like violent and everything. And it was Bob Clark who kind of stepped in and was like, let's kind of show some more restraint. Let's pull back from this. Let's leave it to the imagination. And I think he also was like, let's flesh these characters out more and not have them just be kind of props. So I think that's why you get kind of the humor, or you get these more kind of extended sequences of just the relationships between people throughout it. I don't think he was super concerned with just making it about like the killing aspect. And obviously I think the film is much more successful for it. I mean, it's always great when you can make your characters more dimensional, because when it does come to the more horror or slasher killery aspects of it, it's more effective and more impactful, because it's like if we hadn't spent that time with Barb and her going on her drunken ramblings, would we care as much when she's so horribly killed later on, you know?
Hmm.
It's like and like, you know, it's telling that she has the most violent kill of the bunch, because again, it's kind of it's interesting because I feel like in the genre as a whole, again, later on in it, all of these films have become much more morality tales, or I don't think this film is a morality tale as much. I saw someone kind of sum up the motivations in that scene, and they said that's more about Billy's insecurity than it is about Barb's morals in that second. Because it'd be easy to be like, oh, of course she got killed that way because she's the more you know, again, crass you know, promiscuous, drinking, smoking kind of woman, and we need to punish that. She's the least ladylike of all of them, so we need to punish that kind of thing. But it's more about Billy's insecurities that I think we do get glimpses of seeing him struggling, because like his killing is much more of a compulsion than a method. There doesn't seem to be, it seems like he's something he's plagued by and into doing. And we see him the way he's kind of shaking before he goes to stab Barb, and the way that he shakes the hook before he flings it into Mrs. Mack and all that stuff. And it's like, I think there's a lot of, I really appreciate the film. I really appreciate the film's restraint when it comes to Billy. I think it's always a more effective form of storytelling most of the time, to just kind of feed tidbits to us about his psychology or his past, to kind of explain or give him a more well-rounded idea of who he kind of is. I like that it's kept very vague, but there are things there you could read into if you wanted. Anyways, again, I think it's interesting that a lot of films do like to moralize around women's behaviors, whereas this film did not seem too occupied by it. And again, I appreciate
No,
them
no,
caring
yeah.
about the women's kind of lives overall rather than just being there to die.
But I definitely agree because there's a note. I have a note hit that literally says Billy getting all stabby because of what he did. All Margot shiz is unrelated.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it
yep.
is like it's definitely way. I mean, it's like it's not you, it's me type, but in like the worst way, obviously, where it's like, yeah, it's that there's definitely it's. I don't think even though she is kind of like this proto archetype for that kind of character and would typically be the kind of one that would get picked off first, right? And what we'd see, like, um, well, I mean, I don't know. It seems like the like it's usually the Claires that end up being more the final girl than the
Hmm.
Jesses or the Barbs, and it as a side note, it cracks me up that the actress that played Claire seems very salty about having been killed off so quickly as and she's continued to make her career kind of around Black Christmas, which like fair enough, get your money, get your milk that. It's hard. Business is hard. But so if you've been lucky to be a part of something that has staying power, but it definitely seems like she's kind of clung on to her.
I do
But
think.
yeah, go ahead.
Wait, sorry. Um, I do think that there's definitely something behind the men's actions being what causes harm. Because obviously, I say like with Billy, he's killing her because of what he's going through, nothing to do with what she's just in bed trying to have a sleep. Whereas in other slashes after that, you'll end up with, it's for the slutty character's gone off to have sex, and that's for transgression, and that's blah blah blah. Actually, there's always moralizing. But it's like if you look at the boyfriend's character as well, like I don't think he would have been killed or suspected if he had just been chill about the abortion thing, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Like, his reaction to the whole abortion thing is what makes him a suspect, what gets him killed in the end. He could have just taken that a lot better and then not have died. So, you know,
It's also not taking into account, like, again, what else is going on with this whole like killing and harassment thing. Like he should have,
oh yeah, he just,
to have more
yeah.
presence of mind of like maybe now is not the time, or read the room, or maybe I shouldn't be stalking around a house when there's a big police presence and all this,
Yes, yeah.
it's just like he's very much consumed about this. And in a sense you can say he's quite one-dimensionally written, which again is a bit of a twist on how usually, because usually women are more one-dimensionally portrayed a lot of times at least. And um so yeah, it's just like he has no it seems like he has no kind of situational awareness outside of his own kind of rage that he gets consumed by throughout this film.
Also, something I noticed going right back to the start was how interesting it was that like it had the title Black Christmas, and then like the first four names on the screen in big letters were like actresses. It was like actress, actress, actress. Even though there were the detectives kind of famous at this time, I'm pretty sure, like and stuff. And like I
The
don't think
guy
his
that
name was
plays
in there.
Peter is well known. His name's Keir Duella, I think, or he's most known for being the main guy in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay,
Yeah. So
but I don't think they were. Yeah.
he was like 38 when they filmed this. He was quite older than everyone else.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, you have John Saxon who plays the main detective guy. They were all supposed to be played by different people, and it didn't end up working out. But I think like it ended up working out for this film because, like you say, they that guy at least kind of went on to be more associated with the genre and everything. Um, but it's interesting because people talk about the ineptitude of the male characters and all this stuff. I kind of like I sort of disagree with that a little bit. It's just that they're not
Yeah.
competent, but they do try. Like, not at first, but like you have Chris the boyfriend, and then you have the detective, and they are. I mean, they do seem like they're trying to an extent. They just aren't equipped enough to deal with the situation is, and they also, like you kind of say, fall into a certain sense of complacency of like I know
Mm.
best, we'll corral these silly scared women kind of thing. But
Yeah.
even
They
though, yeah,
they really make it. This is what I noticed about like filmmaking stuff is like they really hammer home the point that like in the men's world it's all jokes. That's where like a lot of the jokes come from that. And then like 'cause there's one of the like a lot of hard cuts, and one of the hard cuts is like the whole boner joke, the fellatio thing in the police station, hard cut to the serious abortion talk going on, and it's like such a jarring cut between what's one set of characters are doing, the police, the people you're supposed to be able to trust, and what the girl Jess is doing. Like she's having a very serious conversation with a guy who then threatens her life, and these police officers just standing around going like, "Ha ha ha, fellatio, you crazy." Um, it's it just feels like there's a bit in Scream where I think it's Scream where no, sorry, no, it's Halloween 4, I think, where they have like two police officers walking and they have like a clown shoe sound effect with them, brr, 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 and it's so
What?
jarring to the rest of the movie, and it just like, and it's almost like that. It's like these police officers are jokes, and we're going through. I don't know if that was like influenced by Black Christmas, but there is like a serious vibe of like these people. Well, as it is to say, the boyfriend and the detective do eventually do stuff. There is certainly a vibe of like all these men, for the most part, apart from Billy and apart from boyfriend who are actually scary, are just jokes. They just don't
Take
messing
it
about.
seriously.
Exactly, they don't take anything goddamn seriously. And you know, the only guy who does, I noticed this, and I made a note of it. For wiretap guy from the very start is like very business. He's not like
Yeah.
dun dun dun, but he is like, okay, what are we doing? This is how I'm going to do it, and he's trying his best throughout the whole movie. I mean, 70s wiretapping is terrible apparently because
I
it
know
takes
it's like
bloody 20 minutes. Got
it
that?
requires so much more effort than I assume that all can be done at just like a desktop now. But it's like,
Mm.
he's having to go back and forth between all the machines and his other
Yeah,
coworkers, and they're like checking all the stuff all the time, and they have to like have a liaison with the police office and all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, and he is very matter of fact about like, okay, this is what I did to your phone. This is what has to happen. Like, we'll be monitoring it, blah, blah, like, and he doesn't. I mean, of course, he's not that big of a character, but like at least
no,
in comparison to the other male characters, he's not dismissive of what's going on. But again, he is getting orders
I
from male people, so it's like,
that part of it personally. I mean, I took a very charitable reading of it, which is that he's the one character who hears all this stuff the most because
yeah.
he hears, so every day he's hearing these phone calls, so he actually gets it. He gets how it can turn bad. And I mean, they don't say this in the movie, so I'm just completely implying it. But like, because he is a wiretapper, he will have heard stuff like this before. He will have heard escalation. He gets that it's an actual threat that we have to take
Well, you think
seriously. And I'm,
police would
but
be dealing with stuff like this a lot too, but then they don't care. But it's like they desensitize to it, but it's also because it's like young women, and it's like there's, I don't know if that's, I don't think it's any excuse. I mean, if anything, he's showing the police how they should be operating. Like he's doing a better job in a weird way of taking this seriously, and just being very like matter of fact about the kind of procedures and operations around what needs to happen in order to try to figure this out and everything. And like, it's interesting, but again, he is mostly getting his orders from men as well. So it's like we don't really see him. I mean, we see him in the house and all that stuff, but and then he explains to them, like I said, like what he just did, what that means, and what they need to do to try to get a good trace and all that stuff. But
but that's
yeah,
why I made a note of it though, because every other character, whenever you see them, are making jokes and doing stupid stuff. It turns into a boner comedy, and he's the only character who appears where it doesn't turn into a boner comedy. And he's
yes,
not, and it doesn't turn into a horror film either. He's just there doing his job,
yeah,
saying, "This is what has to happen. I'm a serious
exactly.
character. Look at me." And it really hit me when I watched it. Like, oh, this guy like isn't being like, they're not doing anything to him. He's just there, and like. Yeah, I don't know if that's a commentary on like how you say the police maybe have to deal with like all these other things as well. So they have like all these masculine things they have to navigate, so they can't concentrate on the actual problem at hand. Maybe I don't know if that's in there somewhere. Again, that's very like subtextual if it is there. But I say like when the dad's looking for his daughter, he's worried, but he's still going like, "What is this horrible poster?" And blah, 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 and she's not my boy. She blah, 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 blah. And the police officer's going, "Oh, Felicia." Every other character, even in serious scenes, if it's not like deadly serious, gets reduced. But it feels on purpose. It feels like it's very purposefully we're making this a joke, even though it's not it's such an interesting film and how they wrote it, where it's like the comedy is used to diminish stuff, and that is the satirical point. It's that look at these people making jokes instead of taking this seriously. Here's how what could happen if it went really wrong. And yeah, he's the one dude who's not doing that.
Well, it's just like another point about Peter too that I remembered is that like the film never once tries to portray him as being a good guy or being in the right for what he's asking and demanding of Jess.
Yeah,
Like he's very much, because like the film very much is from her, mostly her I mean, I was gonna say point of view, even though we get literal POV from the killer, but like,
I guess mostly Billy's.
but it's focusing on her the most, and so it takes her her side, and that's not necessarily even sides. Like again, it's also about how the film isn't. I mean, I guess I can see why they think they weren't taking a stance on it because it isn't necessarily taking a stance on it. It's just presenting the situation very, again, matter of factly, and she's being very practical and very honest about it. And that's just the way some of these situations go. It's a part of life. And like, they're not, I don't, I mean, it does kind of be like, I did appreciate that they didn't try to make his reaction ever seem justified in a sense. They gave him enough to kind of say his piece and get his point across. But obviously, I really appreciated that they allowed Jess to counter that with her side of it too, and also very much kind of say that that's the, if you don't want to moralize, not better, but at least more rational and understanding kind of tact to take with it. Um, and I
Well, yeah, I
think
think
there's have been enough examples where the woman in this situation, especially making that kind of decision, is made out to be the bad guy or evil or hysterical, and so it was just nice. It felt like a very mature and civil take on it, which we often don't get.
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to disagree with you on that. That there are so many movies I can think of where um, the person who's taking the complaint of whatever it is shown to be fine because when the person comes with like, oh, my house is haunted, blah blah blah, they are irrational and you do think like, oh yeah, I wouldn't take that seriously either. Whereas yeah, in this movie, it's like, no, you guys suck. Like clearly they're telling you this in a rational way and clear, and you're just not listening. It's very purposefully saying these people are not listening to these people who need help, rather than giving anyone the out saying like, oh, look at them. Would you really believe that person if they came up to you? There's no like excusing how the people act in this movie. Obviously Peter, but also the police. Yeah. But so when you say they said there wasn't there's definitely a message about not being believed as a woman because it's like as I say for women actresses' names being the first thing you see, the way they're all quite rational and like well developed. It's so purposeful. I can't believe that as much as we do start to say like all the 70s movies seem to be more nuanced, I can't believe every movie was really nuanced and then we lost it that much. It has to be a purposeful thing they did where they're like, we're going to make sure these characters are.
Or it just never occurred to them that that would be a thing. I mean, the abortion stuff I couldn't see how, but just the treatment of the female characters as just human beings that have stuff going on in their life. I mean, the generous take would be that like maybe Bob Clark and Roy Moore,
Just great writers, just great.
but also just like don't see that as being like noteworthy. They're just like, yeah, these are people and they happen to be women and whatever. Again, like I mean, again, I don't I don't know them.
Well, I would say that like, yeah,
But
but like the reason I say great writers is because like writing a person as a person is hard. Like it's not. There's a reason so many films have crap depictions of. Maybe these guys are just fantastic writers who, when they come to a character, can do like fully fleshed out people. But because it is really hard to capture what a real person's like, the fact that they have devoted so much nuance to the female characters and how the male characters don't really have that much to them. If you think about who the detective is outside of the case,
yeah,
who is he? We don't know. Who's the phone guy outside of tracing calls? No one. Who's the boyfriend outside of looking for his girlfriend? No one. Who's Peter outside of being a dick? No one. And then Billy is obviously see Billy's quite complex, but then he's like an entity, you know. He's not really even like a person. We never really see
yeah.
who he is. And yet all the female characters on screen have like these like well developed like different aims and goals and feelings and reactions and stuff. And that takes so the main point is the idea of him going like, oh, we just wanted to create a fun horror movie, blah 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 blah. No, you didn't. Lies, absolute lies. I don't believe it for 1 second. Takes
Maybe it was in
far
there
too much effort.
subconsciously.
Nah, I think you just say that type of stuff because it's like Monty Python saying with Life of Brian, oh no, it wasn't about religion or whatever. Shut up.
Oh, sure, Jan.
But yes. I mean, sometimes you have to do that, especially in the 70s when you're trying to get around people and their moral censorship. I mean, and now, but you know. the debate we have about whether it's better now or then is it's hard because there are certain aspects where I'm sure we do have a lot more freedoms now, but also you look back at these films and you see the nuance and you do think, have we just lost so much of this like conversation that was having at the time, and like, or did the conversation go a certain way where everyone was just like, nope, we're just going to ignore this from now, and just reduce
Yeah.
it all down to stupid stereotypes, which we'll probably cover in the other Black Christmas, I imagine.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll. I'm really anticipating that being such a harsh contrast. And
Oh, I'm gonna go man.
but yeah, I think there was something just to this also speaks to the kind of I guess it's gender adjacent, but it's something that I just took notice of is that I think Jess's sweater is really interesting. It's like this black and white
Mm.
sweater. It's black, and then there's this design that they look like hands across her body. And that feels like
Hmm.
very kind of telling, foreshadowing, telegraphing the kind of physical violation that's to come to a lot of the women, um, and her as well. And I just thought that was, I felt like that had to be a very choice type of clothing to put her in for because it's what she's wearing for the entire
Hmm.
film. And it's just like, shout out to wardrobe departments and set design departments too. Like, all that stuff, when done well, works very harmoniously to get the point of the movie across. And if done well, it's obviously something you don't necessarily recognize or is subtle. And it's like, I liked the set design of the house because it's like, it seems so full of stuff. So you kind of, it's
Hmm.
very lived in. You get the sense of history because they continually throughout show those kind of panoramic photos of all the sorority sisters that lived there before. Um, but it also makes it feel very claustrophobic. And you also, and that helps not only make it lend itself to the more horror aspect of it, but it also is just like gives you more context, makes more sense of Billy being able to just dwell in the attic and kind of make his home within the walls of stuff there
Hmm.
because there's just like already a lot going on in that house. It's obviously very old and has a lot of stuff going on in it. And it's just I always just like kind of putting some respect on those aspects because it's like they're not the sexiest parts of making a film. They're not the most obvious always necessarily part of the film, but like they really, really can contribute if they marry well with the vision of what the director and writer and performers are all going for, can really kind of drive home the tone, the atmosphere, and the messaging. And yeah, just her sweater with the hands on it gave me the ick because it's just like literally like it looks just like something laying their hands on her body, and it's like that has to be intentional, I feel.
I think there's like so much unspoken messaging in this film, honestly. Like, and that's why like the the potential lack of nuance in the latest remake will probably bother me, I imagine, because I don't think this is all like while we've been discussing it because of how Peter's reaction is and whatnot, I don't think this is just purely a men don't get it, women
Yeah.
yay movie. Because if you go back right to the start when it's for abusive callers and how like Margot Kidder is to
She's
the first character
problematic.
guy.
She is a
Yeah,
problematic
exactly.
person.
Just dismisses stuff straight away, and it's so you get that, and then they also have like obviously house mother isn't caring, and what made me think about this is that bit where the carols come to the door,
No, yeah.
and Jess says like hello, and then there's that woman who like tells them to leave, and is like to Jess, oh, a girl got found who was dead, and Jess just says, yeah, I know. Doesn't say like I've got an abusive cooler. Doesn't say my boyfriend just threatened my life because of a boy. Like she doesn't. I can't remember who if the woman's got any relation, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's this idea that like you can't say what you're going through even to this woman who's telling you about something well you already know about, but like this terrible
Right.
thing's happening and who is like clearly safety conscious because she's telling them to go away. Like
Yeah.
the idea that there's this unspoken not maybe not shame but like inability to express what's going on with you as a woman to even other women is definitely there in this movie, and I love that that's like it's touched upon, but it's not like beaten over
I
head
mean,
with
we
it, you
see the
know?
different reactions they have to it because Margot Kidder's character just flat out provokes the killer at
Yeah.
the start, and try to just goes tete a tete with his crude messages. And then we see Claire being like, you shouldn't do that. That's not smart. I don't want to be a part of that, like whatever. And like obviously that leads her to going off on her own and ultimately being killed, unfortunately. Um, and then we see Jess is kind of just like it's interesting because in a way she's I don't know, she's like the dullest of the characters almost, but it's like she's kind of the mediator. She feels like she's very much kind of like the mother of the group in a way of like she kind of I mean Phil is kind of like that too, which I is probably why we see Jess and Phil be so close in the end. It's really sad that Phil we don't even see what happens to her. We just assume she dies, but like she just kind of like goes off and we never see her again or hear
Wait,
like I was
you know, wait,
sorry.
you mean the one with glasses and hair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you see her dead. You see her dead next to Margot Robbie. They open the door
Next
and
to
she's like,
oh God, did I just like
no,
look away in that half second? I must have just looked away in that half second. Shit.
yeah,
But I mean, like
oh, yeah.
obviously it's she's not like forgotten about because like obviously like Jess is like screaming bloody murder for her and Barb at the end and everything to get them out of the house because she's not quite sure if they're still alive or not. But
Yeah. He goes to check on Margot Kidder, and then like that's when she gets killed, and then you see her dead next to her. But like it is like a blink. It's like a
is she in
quick
the
like
same room or she just we just see like her bedroom door move and she's like hung up on it or something or
I think
what
they're both lying in the bed covered in blood.
in Barb's bed?
I think so. I'm pretty sure I remember that from watching it last night. Yeah, and I was like, oh no, because I think I didn't know what happened to her as
I
well.
thought I
But
only
like,
saw Barb. I mean, obviously that means Phil had to come in between when Jess checked on Barb when she was having her asthmatic attack because
yeah,
she was
it's
in the
after
bed.
that. Yeah,
Oh,
unless I'm
maybe.
remembering it wrong. But
I mean, I get it. Maybe, Barb was freaking out and Phil heard and ran in there to check on her and just got absorbed into the
no, no, no,
chaos.
no.
But
Sorry, because that was she was no, she was already dead. Barb was already dead at that point. Definitely, it's the same room,
oh,
but she would have been. It was like later, right, like quite a bit later. Well, not quite, but like later
oh
on.
my God, I
He
completely missed that. Oh my God.
because she's like, oh, what's what's happened to Barb? Where is she? Oh, she's sleeping. And then at one point she goes and checks on her, and that's when she gets. I'm pretty sure she gets killed in the same room, and then you see them two dead next to each other. I'm a good percent sure that's what happened. Um,
Okay, I believe you. I just can't believe that I did not. I don't know. That
it's
doesn't
hard to little bit.
score me
That's kind
points
of
for
like
paying attention, but I
I think they
I
don't like. I think they don't say anything about it. It just kind of happens. I can't
yeah,
remember.
okay.
So
But
mm,
yeah, it's interesting that like I mean Jess is uneased about it, is that a word? But she's not yeah, she very much seems like she's a more kind of even keeled, maybe kind of the peacemaker of the group a lot of times. So it's like again, maybe that's why it's not so surprising she ends up being the kind of quote unquote final girl with it all because she's, maybe has her head on a little screwed more tightly than the others. But yeah, it is interesting that it's not, kind of like to our original point with both kind of Barb and Mrs. Mack being portrayed as not like these angelic creatures, and it's not
hmm.
again, I don't think it's necessarily moralizing about them. I don't think it's saying they're like the film's not trying to say they're bad and they like deserve whatever happens to them, but it's just like allowing there to be a larger tapestry of what a woman can look like and not being so preoccupied with trying to moralize or trying to make examples of them and because I mean Barb has that really troublesome line about townies and it's just like is that internalized misogyny or is that her projecting things that she might have heard said about herself even
Yeah, that's
it's
got
like
like a whole bunch of like class and gender stuff pulled up
yeah
into it.
like that's a dark line and I think it's a quick way into her psyche there a little bit but it's not like the film doesn't treat her with compassion either
No,
it kind of shows that people maybe pity her or feel sad for her especially when she's with her alcoholism and obviously when Jess goes and checks up on her when she's having a nightmare and makes sure that she gets her inhaler and all this stuff and you see that there is kind of warmth and friendship there between them like that this isn't just a person they're kind of entertaining in their life. Like they can kick people out of sororities if it was that bad kind of, it's like Jess is still very much treating her like someone she cares about and a friend and all this stuff. And so it's like And again, she is obviously one of the people she's shouting for to get out of the house at the end of the film too. So it's like it runs the gamut of how women can be, and it is a shame that that seems to lessen as this genre kind of went on, or it became so rigid in the kind of archetypes that it kind of has a hard time busting out of those boxes a little more you look
Yeah,
for this to be an example, and yet you get rid of what makes it so good. It doesn't really make sense.
definitely in like a later slasher, she would be like just the mean girl. Like she would be like insulting Jess half the time, and then just
Yeah,
find
I
a
mean, they would
way.
definitely just try to make a point of it and kind of make it punitive in a
Hmm.
way, I think, or and like you can even look to something like Cabin in the Woods that lays out those archetypes very plainly with the kind of blonde cheerleader, slutty type of woman there, and like I haven't seen it in a while, but don't they be like, oh well, you'd be the first one gone, kind of a thing, and all this stuff, right? Like they're like, and like obviously they don't take it seriously till stuff starts popping off, but it's like obviously we're at a point where we're savvy enough and aware enough of these archetypes, and yet somehow a lot of the time we're still not as successful as the people who are making movies before they realized they were even creating archetypes. So yeah, it's like a weird backwards relationship that kind of has happened with it.
That's true. I think, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this compares to the other ones, obviously. I do think, and this is why when you said that they weren't meaning for you, but it just doesn't ring true because of the ringing at the end as well. Something I was going to touch upon, like you got Jess laying in bed, and then all the police officers leave, and then Billy like rings again, and throughout the whole end credits, you've got the thing ringing phone, and the people still, they're still dead in the attic, and I feel like that's saying these are ongoing problems that are still present in society. Like, we have not solved anything here. We've just shown you part of the problem, and now here's this constant ringing still going on because everything's still happening. And I think that was very, very purposeful. That was not like, I say, a trope horror movie. Oh, tease another one. This was a no. This issue has not been resolved. Kind of like
I mean, I think
stay.
they did it just to be scary about it, but I mean, like I already said, they did reject what the studio wanted to do, and
Hmm.
kind of wrap it up more nicely, and like put a face on it. But it is a very bleak ending. It's like we don't know if Jess is going to survive. Even if she does, or even if she doesn't, this is going to still keep going. Like I really loved the use of the phone ring in this. Obviously, that too has become a bit of a trope in the whole like it's coming from inside the house thing and all that.
Yeah,
Um, but like the sound of the phone becomes so weaponized in this movie. It's just like there to represent fear and intrusion. And it also is like, to me, the way I read it ending on the phone call is that it's similar to kind of what you were saying, in that like this is going to keep persisting no matter what. It's like a compulsion for Billy and maybe the problem at large, that like that phone is just going to keep going off. It's probably still going off to this day, kind of a thing. Like it's just um it's
I think it's one
really
of those.
effective, a really easy, simple thing, but very effective for again, it's one of those things much like Claire's kind of corpse that kind of just looms over and escalates. They kind of make you end up having like a Pavlov response to this phone, because like at the start you're just like whatever, it's a phone call. But as we start to associate it and it starts to symbolize this kind of roving evil of the house, every time it goes off subsequently, it's just like scarier and scarier. And you're just like, oh, fuck, here we go again. So they used that, I think, quite masterfully.
I think, yeah, I think everything around phone calls and to the whole plot in general, honestly, is about how you can't avoid these things from happening. Because, the first girl who dies, she's trying to, like, don't provoke him and it'll be okay. Oh, you're dead. And then, like, the dad is worried about having a boyfriend, but that didn't stop her from dying. And, like, yeah, in the end, you kill the boyfriend. That doesn't stop people from dying. You haven't solved like it's all just this kind of like you can't keep women safe by locking them away and by preventing them from being with people. There's always a threat out there, whether the threat is the boyfriend or is some weird stranger in the attic. It doesn't matter. These things need to be dealt with by taking them seriously and being actually present and not just going like, "Oh, we solved it,"
Being
and leaving.
proactive instead of reactive, like
Yes,
um
exactly. Just looking for the
and
most convenient.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I think that also is why us never like the viewers never like barely ever seeing Billy and obviously having the POV, which was obviously for the time quite uh what do you call it, innovative. Like it hadn't really been done. And like honestly, I think Halloween gets more credit for it than this film does. And it kind of
Hmm.
annoys me. I like Halloween, but like I do think and it's not Halloween can stand on its own as a piece of filmmaking and all this stuff. I'm not trying to give it shit, but I do think a lot of it is I don't know, I don't want to necessarily say derivative. And like I think John Carpenter has been upfront about this inspiring Halloween, and obviously it came out not too long after this and everything. And it's nice to have a film to look to be kind of given permission as a kind of blueprint for what you might want to do. But I see so much of what kind of shows up in that film and what other films do, and it's just like this domino effect. And
Hmm.
I sometimes don't know if I hear Black Christmas talked about in the same breath as I do Halloween for inventing certain, again, tropes and techniques and all this stuff. Because like those shots back in the day, I mean, even now they're probably a bitch to do, but like that guy had to strap like this giant, he had to create a mechanism to have the camera on his shoulder to be able to like move around and get those kinds of
Yeah.
shots and all that stuff. Like it's a like I don't know. But my
Well, I
original
think
point was
that's
like
why.
I think my original point was just like again not making Billy kind of this nameless and faceless because like we don't even know if his actual name is Billy. Um Creature also like lends to your point of like the danger is nebulous, it's everywhere. It you put a name, you put a face to it, and it immediately comes I don't want to say nearly less scary, but it takes away from the point of like this is all around you and that's why we should care more and believe people more and all this stuff. And um I think yeah, I think Billy just kind of being this he's more of a concept really in this film than a character. I think that helps get that sense of danger across more. And so like I'm not looking forward to the other movies that give him a backstory because sometimes less is definitely more, especially when it comes to
Hmm.
horror. Like let your audience fill in the pieces, let their imagination run wild. Um, I don't feel like I need to have a biopic of Billy. I think that ruins it, to be quite honest. But I'll reserve full judgment until I see what they've done. But that's my feeling.
I think there's a possibility that there's like a circular way of thinking where at the time maybe it was seen as like, um, keep women from having boyfriends, especially young women, like promiscuity is dangerous, but in a kind of like a different way of like the abortion stuff, obviously. Um, and then the film is saying, well, it can come from anywhere. And then we have the whole stranger danger thing on the 80s and like, the miscellaneous slashers there. And then in the 90s, it's like, oh no, maybe it is for boyfriend. Ah, and then like now we have more of a kind of like, more likely that a loved one's going to hurt you than a stranger kind of narrative. And I think it's all true. That's the thing. There's danger from everywhere. But I think there is this when we look at it through our lens. My point is, I think we kind of miss that level of like,
Yeah.
or maybe that was seen as something different, where like, we all now kind of know now that like, I mean, we're very focused now on, but your partner's probably the one who's going to hurt you. Like when we talk about the whole Pete thing of, I mean, like that's like where our heads are focused on now. And it's like the truth is, there's threat everywhere. Everywhere's a threat,
This
and we
this
always
this
try and give.
episode's really gonna make people feel good and safe.
I know, but
Yeah,
like
it's
it's because we try and make
interesting
up.
that, you talk about like the modern lens of it all because I had the thought of like if this was made now, would there be some filmmaker or writer that would try to actually reveal Jess as the killer?
See, that be, that's the way to do it.
Did I
She
just
went
spoil the
abortion mad,
2019 one or something? No.
but I know the plot, so
Oh, okay. Well,
it's not that. but
Okay.
it's something we were talking about earlier, and how it would be an obvious thing to do X, Y, Z. So that, yeah,
All
but
right.
we'll
I
get to
have some other guesses that
that.
are ready, but that's unfortunate, and I'm glad that this film didn't do that. And
Hmm.
it's nice to watch movies that are just kind of what they are and aren't trying to necessarily seem overly clever or I like twists. I like mind fucks. I'm all for it, but I don't. I think that there is a preoccupation with that more so nowadays. Um, and it is
But
nice to
you could,
just like be like, no, Jess was okay the entire time. Like she's a decent person, and
oh yeah,
like actually
but
she's and
you
just keeping her being someone in peril rather than feeling the need to inject any more. I think it would just have been heavy-handed and maybe would have made the other scary parts of it inert.
I think you can argue that Billy not being the boyfriend is a twist in the first place. At
I
that
mean, that's
point,
true. Again, I would love to talk to someone who was around when this came out to see if there were those kind of expectations because again, since it was such a new kind of horror film and genre, it's so easy to look at it from hindsight and clock
hmm.
all of those things because we just have much more awareness and again savviness of that stuff. Um, but I wonder if that occurred to people when they were watching it. Of like, I mean, again, they laid on so thick that it's going to be Peter that I imagine people probably did just think it was Peter, and not again, not because I think people were stupid, but because the film went out of its way to do that, and
Hmm.
because uh this wasn't necessarily a type of I don't say a type of storyline didn't exist because I mean it happened like noir films were predated this a lot, but like um yeah, I don't think people went into movies with as much of a nerd brain as people do now necessarily. So
But
I
yeah,
would
it's
be
not. It's certainly
curious
not
to see.
self-referential like it was, like it is rather. Because obviously, if you break it, if you break it down, so taking it at its base levels, the killer should be this strange cooler, which it is, but that's almost a twist because, like, so it's like the levels are, strange cooler, also a boyfriend who is angry because of abortion. Oh, that's probably actually the killer. No, it's not. So it's like it is. I think it is a double twist that they kind of like set up because they kind of like it
Well, I
is.
think it's also
I think
preying on humans' need for there to be an explanation and closure, and that's why films that don't offer that are often very unsettling and memorable to people because it's like you want a why and a who and all this stuff, but it's like, then this movie, the most you get really is a how. Like we see how he kills some of these people, and that's like as good as you're going to get, and it's just like that packs a
I
punch
think
with it.
there is a potential message here of, no one takes the pervert cooler seriously in the first part. And then the twist of it would be for being the boyfriend. It's like, oh, you see, that's who it actually was. It's like, no, no, it was a pervert
And
cooler.
they still
That's
open
who.
the doors for those search party guys. And I'm like, no, have you not
Well, there's that
learned?
line where they're like, oh, we'd rather deal with the guy than Nick. It's
I
like,
know, but
yeah,
it's just
exactly.
like, I don't know.
No, exactly. But that's the point. I think if the point the threat is ever present, it could be any. It could be your boyfriend. It could be a stalker cooler. It could be this guy trying to keep himself. It could be one of the police officers. Any one of these guys could technically be the person who's like a killer because you can't feel safe with anyone. Basically, that's what it
The
feels
way
like.
I wouldn't have entertained any of this for a single second, I get one of those phone calls. I'm like, ah, fuck it, I'm out. Or I would never be opening the door for nobody, even child carolers. I don't give a shit. Like the way that I just like would be the way that they don't even freaking lock the door. I'm like, no, oh, not me. Like,
Yeah,
not saying I
they
would be
definitely all.
smarter than them or anything, but I'm just like, I operate on a level of paranoia that they clearly do not. And again, it's up to times. I mean, like, this obviously is drawing from like the fact that serial killers were much more of a thing. I don't want to say a fad because that's very like trivializing the seriousness of that, but like, it's playing off of that. So it was a very serious and scary thing at the time. Um, but I just like they kind of brush off that kind of like first phone call or whatever, and they're like, oh, here he is again, and I'm just like, the way I would have just been road runnering it out of that house. So if I would have taken nothing with me, I'd be like, I am out. Bye. Like, it's like, what are you all doing? But again, I'm coming at it from a different perspective and different experience and different time. So
Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to like how people existed with like an ever-present threat and just carried on like all the time. I mean, people do it now with with stuff every day. I mean, there's always one obviously you get hit by a car by crossing the road kind of thing. Like
yeah,
we all kind of like function with certain levels of danger at all times. And you kind of have to treat it like how much do I have to ignore to function daily in society? But then coupled with the whole point of like, well, if you just are complacent, you ignore everything, then terrible things can happen. So I do think the film is kind of trying to say, these threats are present and we need to be mindful of them, even if we still have to function day to day. And like, there's definitely a theme of abandoning people despite it. Because like how the house mother says, while all the stuff is going on, I might not be here when you get back. I know this person's missing, and like if there's actively a search going on, as I say, I just might have been gone. I might have gone by the time you get back, just so you know. Yeah.
she's over it.
But
She's over
like
having to be
she's
a
supposed
house
to be the
mother.
person. If there's
Like,
supposed to be someone
she
looking
goes
after
on
them
that
outside of
little
the
like the little rant where she's like, I gotta be responsible for them all the time and what they're doing. Like, ugh, like
no, exactly. Like he does not have any. I don't know if there's moral judgment on her because we talk about the moral judgment thing because of the fact that like yeah, she's never does anything good in the whole movie almost. So there is a level of like,
I just realized there was like a big thing that came up in my research that I thought was really interesting that I didn't mention. I don't know, maybe I'll try to kind of speed run it. But like again, it's a historical context thing where like Vietnam War and like the Ronald Reagan of it all being just over the horizon and um one of the video analyses I watched brought articles up about this and that a lot of the youth at the time was kind of facing similar anxieties that a lot are nowadays where they thought they were going to be worse off than their parents were and how everything felt just very unfair and unjust. And I guess my main kind of summation and point from that is that they and like just this is an overall trope that these masked serial killers that became so prominent in this kind of genre acted as a proxy for a government that was stealing the youth's futures because obviously it's the youth it's young people in these films that this stuff is often happening to literally having their future taken away from them by being killed and this kind of nameless and faceless entity enacting that upon them. And I thought that was a really I mean, maybe people think it's kind of, I mean, I don't know. I'm a big believer that a lot of the kind of art we consume is a mirror and a reflection of what's going on in a society at any given time. So I think there's credence to that. Other people might think that someone's reading too much into it. I do have the link for that video. They go into it much more in depth, so maybe you can make a more convincing case to people of it. But it's not something that I kind of considered again because I wasn't really alive in that time. I wasn't a young person in that time to kind of have that direct lived experience. But as someone that lives in this time that has similar thoughts and feelings and is seeing that kind of play out again, um, it's I thought it was worth kind of mentioning why these kind of killers and monsters were portrayed the way that they were and why it seemed so prevalent for a certain I mean like it kind of has continued and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up as an extra little thing for like, why this film was the way it was, why films that kind of came out soon after it were the way they were. And I always like delving into what was going on at the time that a piece of art was being made. So I don't know. Maybe people will think that that's interesting or go and do their own research on that. But I just wanted to throw that in there.
I think a lot of times with this stuff, even if it wasn't the filmmaker's intent to represent that, there's a reason these films catch people's imaginations, and that relates to what's happening at the time.
Hmm.
So you know, you can fire out like a dozen horror movies, but the ones that relate to, a faceless killer who is taking stuff away from young people, it's what the young people relate to. Then they go see it more, it becomes more popular, and it becomes entrenched in time. So
And
whether
it's
or
why
not you want to
people
say
go back to them and why they endure as
exactly,
well. You know?
yeah, even if you want to dismiss the idea of them being purposely made that way, the
Yeah.
reason they caught on was because of those things. So yeah, I think it's definitely a valid way to read it.
I mean, not awesome because it's like it's tough stuff, and it's sad that history repeats itself. But but I think it's well worth considering. And I'm always for people having just a little more critical thinking or media literacy when they approach things. So if it gives someone, an extra layer to their viewing experience, that's great. That's what's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, yeah. And to link it to our next
Yeah.
episode on the 2006 version, I think the reason torture porn was so prevalent in the 2000s is
Mm.
because of what happened with 9/11. It kind of like shook everyone's idea of what it was to be a person and like the safety of the
Oh
body.
gosh.
And so every
Throw the
film where it's like
9/11 reference in.
it's just, but it's true. But that's exactly why a lot of those films are like that. It's because the ones that
Yeah.
caught on were ones where it's saying like, "Here, I've taken your body and your autonomy, and I'm taking it away." And I think a lot of people throughout the world, honestly, felt like that at that time, and that's why it caught on. Because any film that had represented that, people were like, "Oh no, there was an interest, there was a mind, there's a reason people went back to it." And then obviously that's what sells. So more people make films like that because they know that's what sells, and hence we'll get to the new Black Christmas afterwards, the 2006 one, where as far as I remember, it's mostly just a generic teen slasher mixed with a torture porn movie. But we'll see.
Wow, I really dislike torture porn. So I'm a bit dreading it, but I will soldier on for this podcast. I'm just that brave, guys.
I'm
But
gonna check out the extended cut.
but that
So
obviously will I'm excited to check out more research around that then because I wasn't kind of again, I don't know. In some ways I feel like this podcast should have been called It's Not That Deep because I always go like way deeper than maybe is necessary on things, but it's just how I am and I'm passionate about researching this stuff. So it sounds like there's going to be a lot for me to potentially dive into with the other kind of remakes of Black Christmas. And yeah, I look forward to talking about it, even if I don't look forward to watching it necessarily.
I mean, maybe it will surprise us. Maybe it's a lot better
Maybe.
than maybe.
Well, thanks for kicking this Black Christmas-a-thon off. And I really look forward as well to
But
your thoughts on the next one. And,
yeah.
I'm calling it the Ho Ho Horror series. Sure,
Oh,
I'm not the first one to come up with that, but it came to me naturally, so I'm sticking with it. And you're the Santa Claus of the Ho Ho Horror. You like that honor being bestowed on you.
gonna have like these associations with Santa, especially considering the Black Santa in this film, where he's just like effing and jet. But you didn't touch on that at all. He's
God,
just like, what?
yeah.
What was that? What was the point in that? That was just like a character who never really came up afterwards. Who's just like, fuck me, Santa Claus, and his kids sometimes like, this fucking bullshit,
I'm
man.
gonna.
Fuck.
It was a precursor to A Christmas Story, which was also directed by Bob Clark, where we also saw the Santa and his elves being very apathetic and mean to the children that came. It's like
Oh,
maybe it's just
okay. It's just
and
something he
maybe
likes. Yeah.
yeah. I was like maybe it's that, or it's a specific trauma that he's working out with himself from his own childhood. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
That makes sense. Just always that.
I'll see you next time around. Thanks.
Yeah, it was great to be here, and I look forward to talk about the next Black Christmas.
Gotta say, this movie really makes me glad I never bothered with Greek life, but it sure makes for some stellar conversation. If you liked it, then you're in for a treat because we will be back soon enough with an episode on the 2006 remake. In the meantime, why not check out Gender Pop's past episodes and check out James's work? 'Tis the season to buy some of his books as gifts, methinks. Also, check me out on Threads. There is a link to my account in the show notes. A follow there is just another lovely boost for the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share Gender Pop too. As usual, thank you so much for listening, and the doors to the sorority will reopen soon enough.